What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. In this video I'm going to be doing a penetration test with my 375 Ruger. I'm going to be shooting at some 2x lumber at 500 yards, and I want to see what kind of penetration and expansion we get at 500 yards with the 375 Ruger. And I'm using the Ruger M77 Hawkeye guide gun, which has a 20-inch barrel, and I am running it suppressed. This is a hybrid 46 silencer co, and once again 20-inch barrel. Absolutely love the Ruger guide gun. I have this same rifle in 416 Ruger, and that one got custom night sights made. This just has the regular factory sights, which are fine. I'm going to be doing some comparisons between the 375 Ruger and the 416 Ruger in terms of penetration, recoil, expansion in the very near future. But in this video, we're going to be doing a 500 yard penetration test against 2x lumber. I got a bunch of lumber screwed together, and I'm going to shoot at it from 500 yards away, and we're going to be using hand loads for this one. So I'm going to be using 270 grain LRX bullets and 300 grain TSX bullets. Now, the 300 grain TSX I've loaded to 2,800 feet per second at the muzzle, and the 270 grain LRX I've loaded to 2,900 feet per second at the muzzle. Both of these carrying a muzzle energy of around 5,000 foot-pounds or 5,100 foot-pounds, so lots and lots of power and a good amount of velocity. And I want to see how well these bullets penetrate and expand at 500 yards. Okay, so that is an extreme distance for what I consider to be a big bore cartridge. In my opinion, the big bores start at 0.375. Some people say 0.416 or 0.4, but 0.375 to me is a big bore because you're already pushing a 300 grain bullet. Okay, so we're going to shoot these at 500 yards. Let's see what kind of expansion we get and what kind of penetration we get with the 20-inch barrel Ruger guide gun. Absolutely love this rifle. So let's see what happens, guys.
I must have screwed it up on my sheet somewhere. I had a club 14-incher that broke it 2 months ago. Keep your fingers straight until you're ready to shoot. Okay. So I'll go look at what's over in the club shed quick. Okay. And then I'll double check what's down here. I just need tools to pull it apart. Alright, I'm ready. So I'll be back. I had a club 14-incher that broke it 2 months ago. Keep your fingers straight until you're ready to shoot. So I'll be back. I must have screwed it up on my sheet somewhere. I had a club 14-incher that broke it 2 months ago. Keep your fingers straight until you're ready to shoot. Okay. So I'll go look at what's over in the club shed quick. Okay. And then I'll double check what's down here. I just need tools to pull it apart. Alright, I'm ready. So I'll be back.
All right, guys, 375 Ruger, 270 grain LRX hand loads, and 300 grain TSX hand loads at 500 yards versus 2x lumber. So I haven't actually pulled the bullets out of the boards yet. I just want to go through them one by one so you guys can see what happened before I pull them out. But here we have one group of boards. You can see I had quite a few hits right in the middle. And then here we have another group of boards, and some of them kind of veered out the side here. So we'll see how many bullets we're going to be able to recover from this set of boards. But here we have quite a few right in the middle. So without further delay, I'm just going to go through one by one. So here we have the first board. Nice exit holes there. Nothing really too interesting to report. Here we have the second board. Nice entrance holes there. Nothing too interesting to report. The holes are quite small. They almost look like 30 caliber holes, like 308 caliber holes. I actually forgot that these were the 375 Ruger boards, because I have a bunch of these boards stacked up that I'm waiting to film videos with, and I thought this was a 338 Lapua or 300 Win Mag test that I had to film. But sure enough, after unscrewing all the boards, I figured out these were the 375 Ruger ones. So the holes are not that big, as you can see. Okay, not much bigger than a 30 cal. Exit holes on the second board, nothing really too massive here. Okay, just small exit holes, as you can see. Here's another one, there's another one. So nothing really too interesting to report here on the second board. And here we have the third board, still very small holes. Nothing really too impressive here as far as expansion goes. All right, so still very small holes, not much expansion going on. And then here we have the exit holes. You can see the exit holes are starting to get a little bit bigger here, but still, you know, nothing really too impressive. This one punched through a knot. But, I mean, the biggest exit hole is this one, and that's probably still barely 40 caliber in diameter. So really not a lot of expansion yet. So here we have the fourth board. Here we have a bunch of bullet holes. Still nothing too impressive. These holes are pretty small. Look at that. That looks like the biggest one so far. That's probably the LRX. These are probably TSX, I would imagine, because the LRX is traveling a lot faster and it's moving slower. Here we have something here. We'll have to take a closer look at that. All right, so that's the fourth board. And here's the back of the fourth board. You can see the exit holes are starting to get larger, but still nothing too impressive. Okay, that's a pretty nice exit hole right there compared to my finger. That one's probably like 45 caliber in diameter. As you can see, I got big hands. I can start to fit the tip of my finger in there. And then look what we have here. Looks like one of the LRX bullets got stuck inside of the fourth board, got stuck in the knot. Look at that impressive expansion. Looks like it hit my screw that I used to screw these boards together, and you can see how a whole bunch of the bullet got messed up. You see, like, pretty much a third of the bullet lost its material there when it hit that screw. So you can see how soft the alloy is on these LRX bullets, but pretty impressive expansion at 500 yards. Look at that. Wow, that is a massive expansion there. And that's mostly because it hit right where there was a big knot here, and then I have my screw right there to hold these boards together. So we're probably just gonna ignore that one, but we already have one in the fourth board. And now we have the fifth board. We start to see some nice big holes here. Look at this. My guess is these are the LRX bullets. And then here we still have some small ones. My guess is these are going to be the TSX. Okay, but look at how big this hole is compared to my thumb. All right, and then here's another big one. Wow, this is probably pushing 3/4 of an inch. This one's probably pushing 2/3 of an inch. Another nice size hole there. But here you can see these little ones. These are definitely, these two right here are definitely the TSX. And then here's another good size hole. And then here's another good size hole. So this is the 5th board. And look at our exit holes. They're really starting to get impressive now. Look at this one. My guess is this is from one of the LRXs. Here's another big exit hole there. Another big exit hole. Here's some smaller exit holes right here. Okay, and then this one right here went through the knot or just above it. So the exit holes are starting to get larger in the 5th board. So here we have the 6th board. Look at the size of this hole right here. This one is huge. Can almost fit my whole thumb in it. Here's some other big holes right there. But this one is really impressive. I mean, I wouldn't say it's insane, but you know, that's what you want to see with a 375 Ruger. You want that nice big hole there. Here's another big hole. I can fit my whole index finger in there. Here's another one. This one's small. My guess is this is the TSX. Another kind of smallish one. That's probably a TSX. Here's another one. Here's another one. Probably also TSXs, but you can clearly see the difference between some of these, like these three right here, much larger than that one and that one. So let's see what happens. Here we have the back of the 6th board. Look at that huge exit hole there. Exit holes are starting to get more impressive here, as you can see compared to my thumb. They're starting to get a lot bigger. Okay, that's what you want to see with a 375 Ruger. This one's still very small. Look at that. Just a tiny little hole there. These are probably the TSXs. And then these ones are probably the LRXs, no doubt about it. All right, guys, so we're up to the 7th board, and it looks like we have a bullet here stuck in the 7th board. Check it out. So we're going to try to pull that one out. Got some other holes here. All right, so let's see if we can pull this one out and see which one this bullet is. All right, guys, so I'm pretty sure this is the 270 grain LRX because you can see that big hole in there, which is where that plastic tip would be in. But we're going to have to weigh it to really truly see which one this is, if it's the TSX or LRX. Actually, we can tell by the boat tail. Yeah, this is probably the LRX because you can see that pronounced boat tail. The TSX doesn't have a big boat tail like that, so I'm pretty sure this is the LRX. So the 270 grain LRX traveling at 2,900 feet per second at 500 yards versus 2x lumber. First bullet was stuck in the 7th board after penetrating through 6 boards. I'll be honest with you guys, that's not terribly impressive for such a powerful cartridge. This is roughly the penetration you can expect with a long barrel 44 Magnum at close range with maybe hard cast bullets or solid bullets. So, I mean, it'll definitely drop a bear or an elk or a moose, but maybe not with as much authority as you would think, because if it can only penetrate 6 boards, like I said, that's like roughly a 44 Magnum penetration at close range, because I've done these tests with 44 Magnums. All right, but pretty nice expansion. Okay, still a lot of expansion, and this is in wood, remember, so if you're shooting a live animal, they have, you know, moisture in their body, right? So that would make this expand even more, but pretty impressive expansion in wood. Okay, the Barnes LRX. So let's continue. Here's the back of the 7th board. Nice exit holes here. Exit holes are starting to get a little bit bigger. Nothing terribly crazy, but you know, that would definitely do some serious damage. All right, so 7th board for you. All right, here we got the 8th board, and we got 2 bullets here one there, one there. Stuck in the 8th board. My guess is these are probably the LRX bullets, because it kind of looks like the other one. Pretty nice expansion there compared to my finger. It's, you know, expanded pretty seriously. And you can see that boat tail. So I'm going to say this is another LRX stuck in board number 8. So it penetrated through 7 boards. Nice expansion there. Check that out. So let's see what the other one is. I'm going to guess it's also an LRX. Check that out. Oh, and I almost missed this one. We got another one that just poked through. I'm going to guess this is also an LRX. So we got 3 that got stuck in the 8th board and penetrated through 7. I'm going to guess that these are the LRXs. So let's pull this one out and then pull the other one out there. All right, guys, so interesting results. So the TSX is the other one that was stuck in the 8th board. So one LRX, one TSX, and you can see the difference in expansion, and you can see a difference in the base of the bullet. This one's just, you know, a cylinder. There's no boat tail to help with the ballistics coefficient, but much less expansion. You see that? It didn't really expand too much, which is what you can expect with TSXs. They're not really made to expand as easily as LRXs, and also the velocity is starting out much lower because it's a heavier bullet. So obviously I can't push it as fast as the 270 grain. So you got lower starting velocity and different design, so the bullet doesn't open as easily. Okay, so this is a close range sledgehammer, not a long range expander. So we got both of these side by side. You can see the difference here. So on the right, the 270 grain LRX, on the left, the 300 grain TSX. You can see a difference in the base of the bullet. You can see that LRX has the boat tail, but look at the expansion. The difference in the expansion is quite massive. Okay, on the right, the LRX, and on the left, the TSX. Let me see if I can just stand these up for you guys so you can really get a feel. Okay, so massive difference in expansion there. And we're going to take a measurement of these and see the actual difference in inches, but there's the LRX on the right, TSX on the left, both stuck in the 8th board, which is pretty interesting. So let's continue on. And here's the other LRX. Got stuck in the 8th board. Nice expansion. You can see the blue tip stuck in there. And that's what the tip does. It gets forced back into the bullet and forces the petals to expand, or helps them to expand. But let's compare all 3 of these now. All right, guys, so you can see the 2 LRXs on the right and the TSX on the left. Look at the difference in expansion there. Okay, much more expansion, but roughly the same penetration, which is interesting. You know, you would expect the TSX to penetrate more, but we still got some other bullets, so it's possible the TSX might have penetrated more. This is just one TSX, but so far 8 boards for the LRX and 8 boards for the TSX. Impressive expansion though with the LRX. I'm really impressed that they still expanded this much at 500 yards with a 375 Ruger in wood. Okay, so I would say these would still be expanding out to 700 yards, no problem. All right, guys, so here's the 9th board. We got something stuck in here, and we got some other holes here, but let's see if we can pull that one out. So 9th board, let's see, LRX or TSX. All right, guys, so 9th board, we got a TSX here, and I kind of mangled it up trying to pry it out. But look at how little expansion, very, very little expansion. Very, very little. So That's to be expected. So 9th board, TSX. Let's continue on. And here we got the 10th board. Looks like another TSX. You can tell by the base. Another TSX there, and then we got more TSXs here. You can tell by the base. This is the 11th board. These are all TSXs. All right, so 3 TSXs in the 11th board, 1 in the 10th board, 1 in the 9th board, and 1 in the 8th board. So looks like TSX wins in terms of pure penetration, 11 boards with the TSX, and the LRX went through 8 boards, or actually got stuck in the 8th, went through 7, and the TSXs went through 10 boards, got stuck in the 11th. So let's pull these out, and then we'll weigh them and see what kind of weight retention we got, and we'll measure the expansion, and that'll conclude this test. All right, guys, so we're going to start with the deepest penetrating bullets. Here's our TSX 300 grain stuck in the 11th board. There's the expansion there. We'll measure that in just a second. Let's see what kind of weight retention we got. 299.5. And then here we have 299.2. So very impressive weight retention. Now let's measure the expansion. Like 0.46. Let's try the other side. 0.441. These are approximate, okay? So about 40 cal or 45 cal-ish, maybe 43 cal. Let's try this one now and see what we get. About 47 cal on one side. Let's try the other side now. About 0.46. So yeah, roughly about 40 cal, 45 cal-ish. That's the 11th board, TTS or TSX. Let's try the other ones now. Here we have the one that was stuck in the 10th board, 297, and I think it lost a grain or two from me trying to get it out. So 297 grains. Looks like it's probably also roughly the same expansion as the other ones. Roughly about 40 to 47 caliber. So let's keep going. So now things are going to get interesting because we're at the 8th board. This is the 300 grain TSX that was stuck in the 8th board. 299.7, and we'll measure the expansion, but look at these LRXs. Look at the expansion difference. My suspicion is they're going to be close to 60 caliber in expansion. And we got 266.7 grains. Very good. So that's like 99%. And then here's the other one. 267.1. So both of these losing just 3 grains, and my guess is those 3 grains are in the plastic tip, which is missing now. If we look at these bullets, the plastic tip is mostly gone. So let's measure the expansion of these now. Let's see what happens. All right, guys, so we're right at 0.62, 62 caliber, so huge difference in expansion, about 30% more expansion. Let's try the other one now. All right, and then here's the other one, 0.625, very impressive. So 62 caliber versus 40 to 47 caliber. That's a big difference. 270 grain LRXs at 500 yards, 2,900 foot per second muzzle velocity, penetrating through 7 boards, getting stuck in the 8th board with 62 caliber of expansion and 99% weight retention. And then we got the TSX penetrating through 9 and 10 boards and getting roughly 40 to 47 caliber of expansion. You can see visually a huge difference between these bullets. Okay, look at the difference in expansion. Okay, massive difference here. Okay, so hope you guys enjoyed this video. Check out my 375 Ruger playlist for more 375 Ruger content and penetration tests, and I'll leave a link in the top right corner. And until the next time, take care, God bless, and don't forget the 3 Ps: prepare, practice, and persevere.